Hey everyone, in this episode we're going to discuss the film The Hustle. We're going to give you our thoughts on what we thought of Anne Hathaway and Rebel Wilson, and also why this film left us ultimately disappointed. This is episode 144 of the Reel-ists Podcast. Hello, listeners, and welcome. I'm Donnie.
And I'm Oscar.
And we have our producer, Ruben, here. Hi, Ruben says. And thank you guys so much for tuning into this podcast. This episode, we are going to be discussing the film The Hustle. But before we jump right into that, I want to quickly remind you guys that we are on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at Team Reel-ists, Team Reel-ists, no dash. We're also on YouTube, and we're also on iTunes, so you guys could leave us comments there, and you could rate us on iTunes as well if you're feeling extra motivated, because we surely would appreciate it. And I think that's about it. This is going to be a spoiler discussion, so if you have not seen The Hustle yet, just press the pause button, go see it, come back, and hit resume.
Or just listen to us, because you may not want to see it.
True, very true, depending on what we have to say about it. So without further ado, we'll jump right in. Oscar, initial thoughts, but I got to switch it up since you switched it up on me in episode 143. Where we covered Detective Pikachu. Catch that episode if you didn't already.
If you could pause, go catch that episode and come back.
Just give me your initial thoughts in one sentence about this film.
Low expectations that were met.
Low or no?
Low.
Low expectations that were met?
Yes.
Shoot.
I mean, said in a
It's going to be this kind of episode, huh? No, I appreciate your honesty, man.
Hence the name of the podcast.
Keeping it real. According to Google, Josephine Chesterfield is a glamorous, seductive British woman who has a penchant for defrauding gullible men out of their money. Into her well-ordered, meticulous world comes Penny Rust, a cunning and fun-loving Australian woman who lives to swindle unsuspecting marks. Despite their different methods, the two grifters soon join forces for the ultimate score, a young and naive tech billionaire in the south of France. So that was the gist of it. This movie stars Rebel Wilson, Anne Hathaway, Alex Sharp, and a few other actors and actresses, but those are the three main ones. I have to kind of agree with you. This is a bummer. You know, this bums me out because I didn't think this was going to be the greatest movie of 2019 by any means, but you have two pretty strong actresses. I mean, Rebel Wilson, you know, it's kind of one of those like The Rock situations. Like, you know what you're going to get with The Rock movie. You kind of know what you're going to get with like a Rebel Wilson movie, like the kind of humor she's going to bring. But, you know, I really enjoyed her in, you know, Bridesmaids, really enjoyed her in Pitch Perfect. Obviously, I thought she was hilarious in Pitch Perfect. And Isn't It Romantic was pretty funny to me. So I was like, oh, this might be good, you know. And then Anne Hathaway, she's such an established actress. Like, she needs no introduction. But it's like the two just in this film together, it just didn't work. It wasn't funny. Like, and I think that was the most disappointing thing. Like, I mean, whether the plot was interesting enough or the characters were well developed or whatever, that's up to who's to say. But at the end of the day, this movie didn't really make me laugh. Like, there was a chuckle here and there, which is what it's a comedy, you know, and that's what, you know, that's what you're marketing as, is like this comedy, and it was a letdown, I will say. Unfortunately, I hate to say that because I love both those actresses. But the material just was not there. I told you this after. I mean, I found out after. You ain't tell me nothing.
But it was a remake of an older film, and I forgot what the movie was called. Dang, I should have had my.
Wasn't
facts.
It called The Hustle?
No, The Hustle. This is a different title.
Oh, okay.
It's gonna kill me.
I'll fact check that.
But there was two remakes. But the first original one was, the premise is very similar. Con artist who, you know, try to con a particular person. And I think that's probably one area that this movie struggled with, because it was trying to be almost a gender flipped interpretation of the storyline. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't trying to do anything different. It was just more so of trying to showcase like another way of making the same storyline.
So it's a remake of the 1988 film Dirty Rotten Scoundrels,
Yes.
which is itself a remake of the 1964 film Bedtime Story.
Bedtime Stories. That's the one I was thinking about. Yes.
So it's a remake of a remake.
It's a remake of a remake, exactly. And I think that's probably what have made have had its struggles with it, because I think the storyline it was trying to do was something that has already been done. Not to say we've seen those movies, so we know what's going to happen, but it didn't establish anything that what makes it stand on its own. And I think when you do a remake, even if you don't know that it's a remake, you can feel that it's not trying to become its own movie. It's trying to just hit the same notes, hit the same storyline, and it gets tricky with remakes. But when we were watching this, I mean, just originally, I was like, I'm not getting any kind of humor that feels natural. It feels like they're trying to place these forced humors in the situations of the story, like when she was essentially getting her luck and like getting her way in the beginning of Rebel Wilson's character.
Mm-hmm.
Like I felt like that was a little forced at first. I was like, maybe this is kind of like that part of that humor that they're going to do, where this character is just going to be lucky and gets her way without trying. But it became more of that. It was just more of a reoccurring joke in the beginning, especially to Anne Hathaway's character, who was just trying to dismiss her and then kept popping back.
Mm-hmm.
So I think things like that, where they was just trying to really get the story going, but it was like, oh, well, we got to hit these jokes. So here's a joke, and so okay, one more time. And I think that's probably what struggled. But the characters, the thing is, the characters to me were interesting at first.
Yeah.
You had Rebel Wilson, who was like her way of conning someone was different ways. And then you have Anne Hathaway's professional con, who is more of like, I'm going for the big league. Like, I'm not just trying to, get you to pay for me for dinner or something.
Yeah, she's trying to get like
I'm trying to
millions.
get the rings or whatever, the Lord of the Rings sequence and stuff like that. So I think that was an interesting start. But once it started to become like going back and forth between we're enemies, we're teaming up, we're enemies, we're teaming up, I think that's probably where it was just like, what are you trying to do with your story? Like, what do you want from this movie? And with comedies, it works well as a pitch of like, oh, let's do a movie about two con, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Two,
Con
characters.
artists?
Well, I was going to say con artists, but I was going to go with characters with this premise. And then you got to continue on with that comedy. And that's why I said in my review for Long Shot that I felt like the romance is where it helped continue that story, keep it interesting. Because with this comedy here, it becomes more of like a skit. Like this was like it should have been a skit based off of just the premise of these women are conning you, and it's funny for us to watch from a third perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's a lot of those things that's why it fumbled trying to become something interesting.
I feel like when we were watching it, I feel like what it felt like is I was watching a movie that was kind of like, could have been maybe in like the 60s or the 70s, like in terms of the humor. Like it felt like
white.
Huh?
Like if it was black and white.
Yeah, like if it was a black and white film and
like
it
Bedtime
was
Story.
Sure, yeah, right. It's not, obviously it didn't, it's not like, a lot of humor, a lot of comedies today have like I think it's a pretty, what's that word? Contemporary humor, where it's like, it can like a lot of just like funny one-liners, or usually like some potty humor, toilet humor, or a lot of language. And this film didn't have that. It had more of like the humor of like a film, like I guess like Bedtime Story, like a 60s feel, a little more physical comedy, more slapstick. And I don't know if maybe it's just because it's 2019 and that kind of comedy just sometimes isn't that funny to like this generation, or I just felt like sometimes it was the things that were trying to be funny it was too like a little too outlandish to even, I know it's comedy so you can be outlandish, but it just wasn't hitting the mark for me. To be specific, the whole Lord of the Rings bit. So there was, it was this plan that Anne Hathaway's character had been developing, where she's trying to get getting engaged to all these like millionaires all over the world, and I guess the scam is to try to like scare them off basically, but for her to be able to keep the engagement ring that is worth a lot of money. So she's trying to get all these rings, big, beautiful, expensive rings. So she uses Rebel Wilson's character to kind of portray this like feral, I think is the word, feral, hidden, like weird sister. And she's like, oh, sister, my fiance is going to take us to their, where they live, and we're going to have a new life there. But she was like dressed really weirdly and had like funky looking teeth, and she looked like she had been kept in a cage, but it just wasn't, I don't know, it just wasn't funny to me, like at all. Like it almost was like annoying. And so I didn't, like that whole bit that I guess was supposed to be a funny moment in the film, it wasn't funny to me.
I'm assuming here for that kind of humor, I think just in this day and age, like if you were to see that, I don't think your reaction would be, oh, you know what, the engagement's off. I don't know. I feel like the scam just doesn't fit modern times anymore. I feel like there would be some sense of disbelief and be like, this is a prank, right?
Like it even felt like the way that the men were being scared away, it even felt kind of like early 50s sitcom-ish, like I Love Lucy, kind of like them running out like, oh no, we're not getting married, wedding's off. And she's like, well, what about the ring? Oh, keep it, I don't need it. Like, I don't feel like that would really happen.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's probably why this movie wasn't so funny to me, because I feel like we, as in general, we find things that are pretty close to truth and being accurate in the real world, I think we find funny. And I feel like this was one of those movies where it was just, that wouldn't happen in real life. Like a lot of these situations and scenarios wouldn't play out. So therefore, maybe it's just, I don't know, at least to me, that's why it wasn't so funny to me.
Yeah.
And then Anne Hathaway, she was playing this, like, she was playing a French woman, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And so she had this like French accent, which seemed very forced, and maybe it was supposed to be because it is comedy, so it's supposed to be really like, kind of this like ostentatious kind of thing that she's doing. But then at some point when they're trying to swindle the tech billionaire who's becomes like kind of the love interest to Rebel Wilson, kind of, then she puts on this even more ridiculous like Dutch accent, I think, or something, or I don't know what. It was like another accent.
I don't remember that. Well,
yeah, she was playing. I think it was Dutch or something. But then it was like that wasn't funny either. Like it just, yeah. It's disappointing. It's disappointing when you're going to specifically watch a comedy, and nothing about it really screams like funny to you.
Yeah.
It's just.
I mean, see, and the thing is, like, some of the jokes that Rebel Wilson had, some of it touched modern stuff, and I think that's probably where we chuckled at some of the stuff that she would say. Mm-hmm. But like the using the dress as a trash can, it was like, it
was funny when I first saw it in the trailer. I laughed at that part, but we had already seen it, so it was like it wasn't.
It lost some momentum on that one. But even to me, to me that was like, I don't know. I didn't take that as like a joke at first. Like I felt like it was kind of just. It was like one of those things that was like, wouldn't that be funny if like you kind of looked like a trash bag, and I don't know. It just didn't work for me. Things like that. That the comedy in itself definitely has no relatability. Not to say like if we con someone, I don't even know if a con person would have the same, be like, yeah, that's so funny, I can relate to that. I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe we have to ask a con artist. Mm-hmm. First of all, who would admit they were a con artist? But
right.
That's how you do comedy. My joke right there. Just kidding.
I think the funny scenes that I did laugh at, I was laughing at Rebel Wilson. Anne Hathaway just, her scenes didn't really do much for me.
Yeah. I mean, she didn't have much emotion in her character until the very end. I think the last scene that she was upset at being scammed was the most emotion she put out.
Yeah. But other than that, she was pretty
like tame
and
and
Rebel Wilson. I mean, like the whole, when she first got on the train and she was like, she kept using this kind of same story with all these guys about her really attractive sister that well, the guy in the bar, she said that. What did I forgot what that whole bit was, but
needs money
to get breast enhancements
Yeah.
or something. And then the guy on the train was, she's been kidnapped, and I'm trying to get her back. But you know, like that whole, you know, he's like, oh, you can order anything you want, and then she's like, no, I can't. And he's like, I insist. And then she's like, oh, okay, well in that case, can I get this, and that?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that was kind of funny. And then, you know,
I think it was funny, but then she kept saying too many stuff, and I think that's where it lost it.
yeah, it was a little too much.
Yeah.
It's like, we get it.
She would have been like, can I get just the ultimate cheeseburger with large fries and a large drink? Then I'd be like, damn.
And then can I just get a piece of cake? And on that burger, can you put guacamole on it? Oh, it's extra. Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. Oh,
Yeah.
like, or something, you know?
Yeah.
It was just a lot. She ordered a lot. So like I was saying, some of these things were just too outlandish. They just kept going. It was kind of like overkill for me.
But it probably worked in the Bedtime Story movie, and that's.
But back in the 60s, I'm sure that was hilarious, you know, like, and maybe if this film probably would have been hilarious back then, you know, because comedy's constantly evolving and changing and going in different directions. So it's like, you know, it's like, you know, and I've seen like, you know, episodes of funny shows or funny films back from like the 50s and 60s where I'm not laughing because it's not funny to me, but I can understand back then, like, that was so groundbreaking, you know, or something, watching like the Three Stooges. Like, I would not laugh at an episode of the Three Stooges, but for that time, it was like the people were gut busting laughing and like on their, you know, crying.
Was that like the introduction of physical comedy? I feel like that was like the big hit.
Yeah, that was like, yeah, with those guys. But yeah, I mean, you know, unfortunately, that was just, you know, this film just kind of disappointed in that sense. I did start to get interested when we with the whole bit about the tech guy, the young kind of Mark Zuckerberg looking like fellow, that they kind of both were like, okay, that's the Mark. Whoever can get some money out of him by the end of the week is the winner or whatever. And you know, because he seemed like a really genuine, nice, caring, sweet guy. And you start to see Rebel Wilson's character start to feel really bad about trying to con him, which we haven't seen, you know, throughout in the film prior to that point. She was like fine to, you know, con any kind of man really, but then she started getting feelings for him, so that kind of took it in a more romantic inclined direction. But I mean, I enjoyed that more than the rest of the movie, like that whole, you know,
because I think it abandoned the jokes about conning or getting away with stuff, things like that, and it became something more of like, you know, the premise became more of what happens if you fell in love to the person you were conning or something like that. So yeah, it changed its pace at that second half, that like from the middle point of the movie to the end, it changed that pacing where it wasn't about, you know, the most ridiculous scams or the, you know, the jokes that came from those scams. It was more about we're both competing, but we're both having different perspectives of the situation. One is still on the I'm gonna win. The other one's like, oh, maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe, you know, maybe not this person, or, you know, you can win, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Did you? So the big, I guess we can just say like the twist of the film, if you want to call it a twist, was that the guy that they were trying to scam turned out that he was a con artist himself, and he ended up scamming them in the end, getting $1 million,
yeah,
500,000 from each. And they were kind of there was this character that they called Medusa in the film, who was kind of like the queen of all con artists of the world, kind of, so to speak. And it turns out
terrible use of that.
They didn't really set that up well enough, because you could have easily missed it if you weren't paying attention.
By that, now that I know it's a remake, I feel like the remake, it has something like that, and that's why they put that in there. Because otherwise, there's no purpose for it. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like they were trying to.
And it's not like we saw Medusa. What had happened was the guy, the con artist man, he was the grandson of Medusa, so that, yeah. She passed the torch on to him, so now he kind of knows all the con artists of the world or something like that. I don't know.
And it doesn't leave you with that too. Then there's another twist where he comes back and's like, let's team up.
Yeah.
So it's like,
my question to you is, did you see that twist coming? Because I did not see it coming. I really thought he was this nice great guy. And then as soon as as soon as Anne Hathaway came screeching up in her limo and she's like, stop him. And then I was like, oh, he probably swindled them too, which he ended up doing. But did you see that coming at all?
I just felt that because they were con artists, something was going to happen in reverse, where they thought they were either going to get away with it and they ended up not getting away with it, or he was onto it and he was just going with it because he was bored or something. I didn't think that he was getting them back with the whole, like, I need money, or, you know, give me your money and stuff like that. But yeah, so I would say I was suspicious of something is going to happen with this character, because he kept talking about he doesn't have enough money, and, you know, that's not the situation where everyone thinks he has money, and it's just a little bit of it because the way the company took off and all that stuff. So I was like, they keep referencing that he doesn't have money. So, like, I just feel like, you know, if they heard that situation, both of them would have been like, well, he can't give us 500. You know, they can't give us money, so why would we gonna? So I don't know. So I was suspicious of something gonna happen, but I was not completely 100% on he's conning them. Mm-hmm. So that did get me, but then it got me 100% where him joining up with them. I thought that was the last we were gonna see of that character, which I thought would have worked best had we not seen the character again. But then they go back and be like, now let's team up for a 3. And then it becomes like a little mini short again of like them conning a few other people. I think maybe a few. So, yeah.
I didn't mind him coming back.
He just was a whole different character when he came back.
Yeah, and I think it made me go, wow, he really was a con artist, because he came back like playing a part pretty much, you know, for these other people to try to swindle them out of money. But I was like, wow, in my head, I was like, you got me, dude. You really did. Because I was really feeling like you were such a good guy. And then he came back in this kind of like tourist
guide,
like big shot, kind of like southern, like he's running daddy's plantation, kind of like that southern kind of rich a-hole. So it was cool. I didn't mind him coming back. I did think it was a little odd, because if you're so good, I guess, I mean, I'm like, if you're so good of a con artist, you don't need to team up with anybody. But, you know, he was just like, you know, the 3 of us are great. Imagine what we could do together. What I did find odd was that I didn't think he was going to be romantically into Rebel Wilson anymore. Like, I thought he was going to be like, that was part of the scam. That was part of the play too. But it turns out he was like, said something like, everything was a lie except what I said about you. So then it was like, immediately it was like, okay, so now they're together. Like, so I don't know. It was just kind of odd, I guess. But, you know, I mean, it was what it was. And the ending was, it was nice to see all 3 of, I mean, I feel bad saying that, but it was nice to see all 3 of them like teaming up together and like, you know, still, I guess, continuing to scam people. I didn't feel too bad about the people they were scamming, because they were kind of like stupid to like believe such outrageous lies anyway.
Yeah.
And it's not like they were like taking, you know,
it's not right
that
to
much
scam
money.
Donnie.
It was just, they were taking like a couple $100 from like a lame guy. So I was like, I don't know, it's a little justifiable. Like, they weren't doing too bad of things, but I don't know.
Someone might be a con artist on this podcast.
Hey, they made it look really easy, and they made it look pretty
rewarding.
What's lucrative?
Yeah,
very lucrative, and they made it. I mean, I know con artists make it look easy, but I'm like, is it really that easy? But you know, can't do that stuff with a clean conscience. But yeah, I mean, did you have any? I mean, we ragged on this film pretty hard, but was there anything about this film that you thought they did get right?
I mean, they took away the development, because I thought maybe Rebel Wilson's character was like, oh, maybe conning isn't what I should be doing. Maybe like that. Maybe my interpretation of it was bad. So that ending destroyed it, because they're just like, oh, we'll just team up in 3 now and like continue doing it. But I would say, to me, what I think worked the best was kind of just that back and forth play, I think, and it didn't click for us, but I think it works best with Rebel Wilson and Anne Hathaway kind of both going back and forth with the spotlight of one feeling like they have the upper hand and the other one feeling like they have the upper hand, or like one took control and the other one's the passenger, and kind of like would switch. So I think their character dynamics and then the actresses themselves, I think they worked well off each other. So I would say that probably would be what they best got right. But the story itself, the humor, a lot of things, it didn't work in our case for ourselves. But yeah, I feel like the dynamics between the two characters was probably the most interesting and fun part of the movie because the actresses made it work. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say probably would work. What worked well the best.
I'd agree. I would agree. Not to like do a cop out like easy move, but I mean there's nothing else really that I feel about this film that they like knocked out of the park. I think the two actresses did. They had good, I guess, chemistry, like good dynamics together, and that was fun to see them like, you know, kind of tit for tat sort of thing. But yeah, you know.
And even I just want to point out the Rebel Wilson being blind joke went on a little too far.
Way too long, and it was.
And to the point where the guy, I was like, is this guy really not?
I was like, there's no way this guy can be that naive to like really believe that
She can't, yeah.
Because it's not like she was so convincing about it, like, you know.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I agree. That joke went on for a little long. Did you have a favorite scene? I think I know what your favorite scene is, but let me guess. Let me guess what your favorite scene is. Was it when she was doing like the training to become?
Yes, because I told you that. Yeah. the little montage, training montage. I mean, just old school, like, you know, no dialogue, just physical comedy.
Yeah.
That worked for me.
That was one of the funnier scenes.
I mean, the one that just worked was the knife when she like poked herself,
threw it up in the air, and it landed on it. Yeah.
Because I mean, talk about like, you know, realistic humor. I'm sure many people have seen movies and thought like that's cool, and I'm not saying everyone's tried it, but realistically, that's probably going to be the outcome of what would happen if you try to throw a knife in the air and catch it. Was you're probably going to hurt yourself. So, but yeah, that entire sequence I think was the best for myself.
No, that was a good one. I'd probably say, I mean, it wasn't like the funniest moment in the movie, but just the scene when the guy came back and we saw him like as a different persona, pretty much, and him proposing the idea for all three of them to team up. I probably liked that scene the most because I was like, oh, you sneaky son of a gun. Like, I didn't suspect it at all. And he came back, and I was thinking like, wow, they all three are really good con artists. So if they did team up, like, imagine all the stuff they could get away with. So that was probably like my most enjoyable scene if I had to pick one. So yeah, with all that being said, Oscar, what are you going to give The Hustle? Final real score time.
I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5.
Okay.
And I'm not giving it lower than a 2 because I will say the characters, the actresses, still managed to make the best work from their characters and what they're given. They couldn't make this a positive movie or make the story work, but I think their presence on screen was still entertaining in itself to just see Anne Hathaway and Rebel Wilson. Their characters was, what it was, but I feel like they still kept you at least, but were willing to watch the movie and just see these characters or just see them on screen.
They didn't keep the people in the seats next to us to watch the movie because they dipped out like probably midway through the film. They're like, let's just go. Yeah,
we did have people in the theater, which not a good sign, but I mean, to me, that's, I think, the best positive I can give them is their dynamic between the two.
Mm-hmm.
I would encourage the studios to have them like another movie. Maybe they don't have to be the leads, but maybe they have them co-star in another film with other leads or have another moment for them to have a shine. Something else, something with good material. Who knows what that could be?
Ouch.
Like you keep saying ouch on all the stuff I say. But yeah, so that's what I would say would be the strongest. Some humor worked, very small. I would say like 4 or 5 jokes out of an entire movie, but I would say, I mean, I did chuckle, so it did get me in some parts. I can't say it was a complete boredom. I didn't fall asleep, nor did I leave the theater. So
okay, yeah, those are 2 good signs.
Right.
Yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna. Yeah, I'll give it a 2 out of 5 too. I'll give it a 2 out of 5. I was bordering between like a 1.5 and a 2, but a 1.5 is pretty harsh. I think it. Yeah, you know what? And there's another scene that I thought I think we both pretty liked it too. Was the seeing the first con of Anne Hathaway and her team at the casino. That was a pretty that was a pretty interesting scene to watch, and just to watch how they pulled it off.
How they introduced us to her character.
Yeah, so then it's like, wow, she really is a good con woman. Like, it did hook me and make me interested for the rest of the film. I think the rest of the film was kind of deflated a little, but it was a good starter, a good way to engage. And some of the scenes, some of the chuckles, like a lot of them, I said, were from Rebel Wilson, but the story itself wasn't a bad story. I just think the execution was off, and I did get a little emotionally invested when they were trying to con the tech billionaire. He really wasn't a billionaire. He only had like 500,000. Oh well, no, that was a lie. Sorry, he was. He that was a lie. I forgot. See, that's how good he conned me. But I did.
Still conned.
No, he still got me.
Still in denial.
But I was interested in the whole watching him and Penny try to, formulate whatever this relationship was between them, and I wanted to see how that played out. And the ending, I was satisfied with the ending. It wasn't, I was content with what I got. So, and I do like these two actresses. So for that, I'm giving it a 2 out of 5. So Ruben has not seen the film. So he's going to give it a 1 out of 5, which is probably the closer to a lot of people's scores for this movie.
Talking about me and now.
But we definitely want to know what you guys thought, listeners. So share your thoughts. If you like the movie, or if you're kind of on our bandwagon and you just did not get it, it just wasn't funny. Whatever you thought about the movie, just let us know. Remember, we're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and you can also leave comments on YouTube and iTunes as well. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode, and we will catch you next time.